Okay, so good day guys. We are now at chapter 6 for long-term memory. So we'll talk about the structure first, or the how the LTM is built before focusing on its functions, which is going to be discussed in chapter 7. So please try to also read that chapter in advance so that you fully understand what the how different is LTM to the STM and WM. All right. Okay, so these are some of the questions we're going to consider for this particular chapter. So, how does brain damage affect the brain, and affect how does it also affect the ability to remember what has happened in the past and the ability to form new memories of ongoing experiences. And then we will also try to focus on answering the question of how our memories for personal experiences, like what you did last summer, different memories for facts like capital of your city or your country rather, and how do the types of memories interact in our everyday experience? And also, we'll be talking about how has memory loss been depicted in popular films. Okay, so there's a distinct division between different types of memory. So, na-mention to last time when we started discussing memories. We have, diba, the short-term memory, working memory, long-term memory, episodic, etc., etc. So, understanding these distinctions of the different types of memory can also help us understand further ano ba yung mga functions ng mga different types ng memory na to. Kasi to understand the types will also help us to distinguish yung mga functions niya, ano yung roles niya sa ating cognition. And then, in terms of its distinction, it doesn't mean that they do not interact with each other. We have seen in the past chapters how important the interaction between different parts of the brain. So, um, and having this type of knowledge, we can also infer that the different types of memory also interact with each other, and they can also share the same mechanisms as well. Okay. Now, focusing on the long-term memory, we know that this is a a system that is responsible for storing information for longer periods of time. So unlike with the short-term memory and the working memory, which only holds the data for um, a specific or a shorter amount of time, this one we use this particular storage system in the brain in order for us to archive the things that we can archive or the things that we want to archive, like the past events in our lives and also the knowledge that we have learned in the past. So ano ibig sabihin ng archive, di ba? So, if I ask you right now, when or what birthday celebration is the most memorable for you, di ba? So, that particular data, you have stored that. You can answer that question because that particular data had been stored in your long-term memory. You have archived it in your long-term memory. So, like in my case, the most memorable birthday celebration for me was my seventh birthday celebration. It's because I had chicken pox that time together with my sister kasi parehas kami ng birth month. So my parents decided to celebrate our birthday at home together with our cousins. We rarely celebrate our birthdays at school because um, our birth month does not uh, uh, we don't have classes during our birth month. So, laging sa bahay lang yung ano namin, yung celebration. So, that's that particular information I got it from my long-term memory. And then this capacity or how do we differentiate the long-term and short-term memory? So we have two ways to differentiate them. So the first one is the duration. So we all know that if the information is stored in the long-term memory, it's going to be stored there for a longer period of time. Whereas if it's in the short-term memory or the working memory, is the duration of the storage is going to be for a very short period of time. And then in terms of the capacity, we know that for the LTM, the capacity storage is very large, whereas for the short-term memory, the capacity storage is very limited. So this is why some of the things that you have learned in school are forgotten because you learned it in a way that you only put it in the short-term memory or the working memory. Kaya pag ang nangyayari tuloy, di ba, pag kunwari, when you get to third year, tapos ako na naman yung prof nyo, tinanong ko kayo, di ba tinuro ko na yan in your CogPsy? And then, most of my students will look at me blankly. It's because they have forgotten the lesson. They didn't store it in the um, long-term memory, which can actually hold a large amount of information and for longer periods of time. So, anong nangyayari in between? Bakit hindi siya na-store doon? So, mamaya pag-usapan pa natin siya further. Okay, so in terms of how things are done, in a particular experiment, okay, mamaya makikita natin yan, and hopefully nabasa nyo na, um, they have seen that the percentage of subjects recalling each word versus its position on the list matters. So, kung nasang position siya sa listahan, magmamatter siya. This is very important actually, and I can relate to this as well. Kasi when I get my class list, pag tinanong mo sa akin, sino-sino ba ang nasa ano mo, um, nasa class na to? For ABSCIC or for CogPsy, I can remember kung sino yung nasa first uh, number one sa list or first ng list ko, class list. And the last name on the class list. Kasi nga, those are the two things that stand out for me. The ones in the middle, I'm sorry, but I cannot remember kung sino yung mga nasa middle ng listahan ng class list ko. So this is also why I try to put my class, yan, para alam nyo na ha, pag face-to-face na yung class with me, automatic I put them in an alphabetical arrangement so that it would be easier for me to know kung asa nakaupo. So it would be easier for me to remember the student, the face of the student, kasi nga may certain position sila sa class ko or sa classroom ko. Yeah. Okay. So in this particular experiment, they have experienced or they have established the primacy and recency effect. Now, the primacy effect, ito yung the phenomenon wherein they saw that the subjects are more likely to remember the words which are presented at the beginning of the sequence. So, um, like for example, yung first 1 to 3 words, yun yung mga mas nare-remember nila. So, the reason behind this, it's because there is more time to rehearse these words than the words in the middle and the words below. On the other hand, the recency effect naman, the better memory for stimuli presented at the end of the sequence because um, mas nasa ano siya, kumbaga mas naglilinger siya sa ating short-term memory. So that's why it's easier for us to remember the things at the last part of the list. So, if you would think about it, this is quite true, 'di ba? Parang pag nag-study ka, or if you would recall back the time when you are memorizing poems, diba? Usually, yung first stanza or first line or first 2 lines ng poem, you don't have a problem in recalling or reciting it. Kasi, um, you had more time to rehearse it. Kasi usually when we're trying to memorize a poem, we don't really start by memorizing the middle stanza or the middle verse of the poem. We usually begin at the first line, the first stanza. So, um, nagkakaroon ng mas madaming rehearsal, 'di ba? So, that's primacy effect. On the other hand, with the recency effect, may ano naman doon, may factor doon ng, yun nga, short-term memory. And then, aside from that, may factor din doon ng motivation. Kasi alam mong patapos na yung minememorize mo. And if you're someone who doesn't really like to memorize things, parang you would be glad that it's over, diba? So, talagang mas mataas yung motivation, or ano bang other word for that? Yeah, motivation to memorize that. Kasi alam mong pag nandiyan ka ng part ng poem, tapos na yung paghihirap mo, lalo na kung sobrang haba ng poem na minimemorize mo. Okay. So in the next, this particular slide, we can see yung naging results ng study. So in this particular study, we can notice that, ayan. So the primacy effect is here. Yan. And then the recency effect is here. So habang nasa dulo na siya, papataas siya. So, this is the serial position, percent of words recalled. So, kung makikita mo, dahil nasa taas, ayan, around 60% here, and in the first few words, and then bumababa na siya, nag-form siya ng parang payong na trend dito sa gitna. Because ito na nga yung mga words na nasa middle. And then, ayan, tumataas na naman siya pagdating sa dulo because it's stored longer, because it's in the short-term memory pa. Not because you had more time for rehearsal, but it is at the end of um, the list. Okay. So, let's look at this table. Ayan. So, while looking at this discussion, while listening at this discussion, please also look at the figures in the book para mas maintindihan nyo. So, in the figure 6.3, we see the primacy and recency effect being illustrated, wherein they did that by um, letting the participants recall immediately and after the list of words that they have heard. And then in figure 6.4, it illustrates the words at the beginning of the list are repeated, which are repeated more. So they are likely to get or mas mataas yung chances na mapupunta sila sa LTM or sa long-term memory. And then, in figure 6.5, ayan, recency effect naman yung nakita nila dito. But it's eliminated because the rehearsal is prevented. Paano nangyari yun, ma'am? So, nangyari yun because they asked the participant to recall the um, counting. Recall the list after counting backwards for 30 seconds. So, uh, dahil nagkaroon ng interference with the task, hindi na nakapag rehearsal. So, ang mas naglinger sa memory nung participants is the words that are last on the list. So, please take note of that. Okay. Now, how does coding happen in the short term or long term memory? So, coding is when we form the stimuli um, represented. So, kung may nakita tayo, may narinig tayo. So, as soon as we process those things that we have seen and heard, or pumasok sa sensory experience natin, these are going to be coded. Okay. So, we have two types of approach for coding. So, the first one is the physiological um, coding, and this determines how the stimulus is represented by firing of the neurons. So, yun nga, pag if we would go back doon sa perception lesson natin, di ba, may neural firing doon. Depending on what stimulus we are seeing, um, doon din magkakaroon ng different levels or varying levels of neural firing na magtutulong sa pag-perceive nung nakikita natin na bagay or naririnig natin na sound. And we also have the mental approach to coding. So this is how stimulus or experience is represented in the mind. So this is more on making sense of what we have seen or heard. So we can code it by either of the two ways. Okay. So we have furthermore, we have these three types of coding. So the visual coding, when we code things in our mind in the form of visual images. And then auditory coding, when we code things in our mind in the form of sound. And that's the semantic coding, when we form things in our mind using the terms of meaning. Okay, so let's understand it further. So visual coding in short-term and long-term memory. So what's the difference and what are the similarities? So we use visual coding when we visualize a person or a place from the past, diba? So, like for example, sasabihin niya, kilala mo si ganto? Ayan, visual coding na yan. Either when you retrieve it or when you first try to code the information. Or sasabihin sa'yo, nakapunta ka na ba sa gantong lugar? And then, of course, kung familiar sa'yo yung sinabi niyang lugar, you would try to get a picture of that. You would try to visualize that particular place that the person mentioned. So, like for example, sabi niya, alam mo yung Starbucks sa Uptown? So, ikaw, dahil may dalawa kang alam na Starbucks sa Uptown, the one in Uptown Parade and the one in the Uptown Mall, yung katabi ng chapel, di ba? Iisipin mo, alin doon? Yung isa or yung isa? So, you are able to do that because of visual coding. And then, we also have the auditory coding in the short-term and long-term memory, wherein we have another experiment that allows us to see anong nangyayari with the phonological similarity effect. So, minsan kasi, ang problema lang natin with the auditory coding, sometimes it sounds like it, 'di ba? So, like for example, pag tinatawag ako, kasi ang tawag sa akin ng mga kasama ko sa yung mga faculty members ko ay K. And then we also have Professor Egargo, whose second name is Faye. Diba? So, um, so nagkakaroon ng phonological similarity effect. So, ang nangyayari tuloy is that when I code that sound and then it stays on my short-term memory. So parang isipin ko pa, sino bang tinawag? Ako or si Ma'am Faye? And then I would try to clarify it by asking the person who called the name. Okay. Another good example of this one would be when we listen to our playlist. Diba? Kung may Spotify playlist ka and you didn't play it on shuffle mode. So, dahil ilang beses mo na siyang na-play, kabisado mo na yung mga kantang nandun. Kabisado mo na ang susunod sa kanta na yon ay itong kanta na yon. Tapos na yung, like for example, siguro puro BTS ang example ko. Like for example, when I listen to the album Map of the Soul, Persona. So alam ko after nung solo track ni RM, which is Persona, uh, Boy with Love na yung susunod. So parang naririnig ko na yung first few chords even though it's not playing pa. So yun na yung agad yung naririnig ko kasi nga I have listened to that particular album for many times na. So medyo kabisado ko na siya. Okay. So, this is the graph doon sa study na na-mention natin kanina. And what happened here is we can see the difference in the trial. So, the fruit groups, yung binigyan lang sila ng list of names of fruits in the list. And then in between the blue part shows an interference. Ayan. Proactive interference. So this shows us a reduced performance on trials 2, 3, and 4. Kasi nga may interference na nangyayari. Here, and here. And then the B trial, which is professions group, showed similarly reduced performance on trials 2 and 3, but increased performance on trial 4 represents a release from proactive interference because the names of the fruits rather than professions were presented on trial 4. So, nandito yung interference by in trials 2 and 3, pero nakita natin tumaas ulit yung performance nila, yung number ng fruits na nare-recall nila nung nawala si interference. So, what does this particular experiment tell us or say to us, diba? So, nakikita natin na with the proactive interference, this can decrease memory that occurs when previously learned information interferes with learning new information. So, diba, when you try to study or when you try to do advanced reading, ito ulit yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, diba sasabihin mo, nagbasa ako pero wala pumasok sa utak ko. Ano bang ginawa mo nun? So, maganda tong subject natin kasi it makes you question your study habits. Tama ba yung ginagawa ko pag nag-study ako? So, diba some of you would listen to the radio. Napag-usapan na natin ito in the attention chapter as well as in the short-term chapter and working memory. So, 'di ba, ang tanong natin doon lagi, paano ba yung setup mo pag nag-study ka? So, if you are studying while actively listening to music, una-una, it interferes with your attention. Lalo na kung yung music pa na pinapakinggan mo ay may lyrics. Regardless if the language that you're hearing is something that you can understand or not. But the fact that it has words at the back of your mind, you're trying to decipher what those words mean, or you're trying to understand these words, even though it it doesn't really mean anything to you, or you cannot perceive it properly. So papasok din dito yung function ng perception. Kahit na hindi natin naiintindihan, parang the fact that we're hearing syllables, we're trying to process these syllables pa din. So, nagiging high load task yung pag-study natin with music in that manner. So, ang nangyayari ngayon, nagiging proactive interference ngayon si music sa pag-aaral natin. So, ang nangyayari, nagdi-decrease yung recall natin doon sa mga materials na pinag-aaralan natin, because there is an active interference that's happening in between. Okay. So, this is also why when we study, na lilimit si rehearsal, and of course na-prevent siya in becoming stored in our long-term memory. So yun yung isa sa mga explanation kung bakit minsan hindi natin susustain or mabilis natin nakakalimutan yung inaral natin. Na-code lang natin siya sa short-term memory. Diba? Okay. Okay. Aside from this, the semantic coding also has some sort of effect in the storage for the long-term memory, as seen in the experiment by Jacqueline Sachs. Ginawa niya dito is that um, she and her team made the participants listen to a tape recording of a passage, and then they measure the recognition or recall in the memory, and then they try to determine if the participants remember the exact words of the sentences, or if they remember only the general meaning of the sentences that they recalled, or the passage that they recalled. So, so ang lumabas doon sa study nila is that the participants, most of the participants have forgotten the word for word, um, yeah, the word for word things in the passage. Nakalimutan nila yung mga words na ginamit doon sa passage. However, they saw in the experiment that the participants have understood the meaning of the passage, and this is what have been stuck with them for a long time. So, from this experiment, we can see that making meaning of the things that we heard or seen or read, diba, are a good example of semantic coding in the long-term memory. So this is why when I do when I do my lectures, I try to give an example that is relevant for you guys, or example that you will be able to uh, parang ano ba to? Yung maka-relate kayo. Kasi this is also another thing that you have to um, take note of when you're studying. Kasi when you're studying, mas maganda when you're doing semantic coding. not only visual coding or not only auditory coding but also semantic coding kasi mas longer talaga siya sa long-term memory. So this is why when I study, personally when I study, I read the meaning of the concept or of the term, and then I try to make an example about it, or I try to define it after using my own words. Kasi nga, mas nag-stuck sa atin or mas nag-stick sa atin yung general meaning na kung paano natin siya naiintindihan kesa doon sa uh, book meaning na binigay sa atin sa textbook. So, this is why when I teach, I try to give them the general idea of what the concept is in order for the students to make their own meaning of it na papasok doon sa operational definition ng word talaga. Kasi if ang nangyayari din kasi kaya mabilis makalimutan ng estudyante yung yung mga concepts na pinag-aaralan nila, they study it in a way na it doesn't really mean anything for them, or they study it in a way that they cannot relate to the concept. So, ang nangyayari talaga, mapupunta lang siya sa short-term memory because it doesn't really hold any meaning for you. Diba? So, hindi ka makarelate. Hindi mo rin, dahil hindi ka makarelate, hindi mo siya mabigyan ng own meaning mo, or hindi mo hindi mo mabigyan ng personal aspect dito sa coding mo na to. So, actually with semantic coding, minsan pag inisip lang natin siya in that way, na parang operational definition lang siya, after some time, kahit na alagay na natin siya sa long-term memory, makakalimutan din natin siya. Kasi nga, you put it in a way that it's only the general meaning, but the meaning doesn't really have something to do with you, or you haven't really made it into personal memory. So, pupuntahan natin yan in the next few slides. So, kumbaga, hindi siya foolproof, pero nakakatulong siya na mas mapatagal yung data sa memory natin. Okay. Okay. So let's try to see the differences between the code in terms of how it's stored in or how it's coded rather in the short term and the long term memory. So in the visual memory, for short term, it's like holding an image to the mind to reproduce as a visual pattern that was just seen. So like for example, di ba pag nakakita tayo ng OTP, ayan, OTP is a visual code. Kumari magsisend tayo ng pera sa GCash or yung CIMB, kung gumagamit kayo nun, or any online platform um, for buying or sending, transferring money online, di ba? May OTP usually sinisend sa atin yung bangko. And we know that the OTP is going to change the next time that we use it again. So, usually we code it visually in a short-term memory kasi nga, it's going to change after. Parang pagkabasa mo, anong code na to? 48HZ. So, and then, after that, hindi mo na naalala ano ba yung OTP na binigay sa'yo. However, with the long-term memory, so we can look at it like visualizing what the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. looks like. Or in our case, because we haven't been, or most of us haven't been to U.S. yet, pag tinanong ka, sasabihin, tara punta tayo sa market. Diba? Na-visualize mo na kagad what the market looks like, or what SM Aura looks like. Diba? And then next one is for the auditory code, representing the sounds of letters in the mind just after hearing them. So, like for example, yeah, just like what you have heard, I said so it's either you are um, processing the words, the letters A and H or U and H, depending on how you heard it. And then long-term memory, repeating a song you have heard many times before, over and over in your mind. So this is why we get the LSS, diba? Or the last song syndrome. Or when we hear a catchy tune, parang nahaham natin siya. Kasi nga, parang nasa long-term memory natin siya. Na-code natin siya in the long-term memory. And then the next one, for the semantic memory, placing words in an STM task to categorize based on their meaning. So, like when we're grouping people, so like for example, sasabihin mo, si gantong name, si parang Villanueva, si Egarco, si ganto, nasa ano sila, nasa work from home group. Ito si Ibanez, si Tenorio, si ganto, nasa RTO group. So, so those are based on their meanings in terms of how they are grouped and kung ano yung groupings na yun. And then for the long-term memory, for the semantic memory, diba, when you are, uh, I rarely do this in the class pero sa ABSI class namin, we usually try to recall some movies na may kinalaman do sa disorder na pinag-uusapan namin. So, just like last week, napag-usapan namin yung dissociative disorder. So, na-brought up namin yung Split na movie. Kasi sabi ko, Split movie is a good presentation of a dissociative identity disorder, blah, blah, blah. So, na-recall namin yung movie na yon because it's coded in our long-term memory. Okay, so, long before the science of cognitive psychology, locating the memory in the brain was pretty much impossible or medyo clueless yung mga practitioners in the field for this one. Asan ba? Parang bakit niya nakalimutan? Asan ba yung memory na yun? Baka pwede nating maayos yung part na yun ng brain niya. It's because, of course, technology is not there yet to help out with this particular task. And, of course, the studies were quite limited about this particular subject. However, since it's advanced science and technology at this age and time, nagagawa na natin siya ngayon. So, like for example, with the field of neuropsychology, natulungan tayo na mas maintindihan asan ba banda yung mga memory na to na may kinalaman sa gantong particular type ng memory. So like for example, episodic, semantic memory or procedural memory. So, malaking tulong yung mga naging sakit. I'm not saying now we're glad these people have are sick or these people have encountered accidents. But I'm saying that um, dahil dun sa cases nila, mas natulungan tayong intindihin asan nga ba itong mga memories na to. So like for example, with the case of patient HM, na ang nangyari sa kanya kasi in-eliminate yung hippocampus niya because of his severe epilepsy or epileptic seizures. So take note of these parts. And then we also have Clive Wearing. Now, Clive Wearing, I'm not sure if alam ko na-upload ko to pero let me check in the TBL Hub kung na-upload ko to sa yung part ng memory from Crash Course Psychology. Clive Wearing is a known musician and director. Now, he got viral encephalitis and that particular disease have caused his some parts of his medial temporal lobe. Please recall the parts of the brain while we're talking about this para mas ma-visualize nyo siya and mas magstay longer siya sa ating memory. Pun intended, ha? So, so dahil nagkaroon siya ng ganitong sakit, ayan, nagkaroon ng damage sa temporal lobe niya, medial temporal lobe, which includes the hippocampus, his amygdala, and other structures in the temporal lobe. And then lastly, we have patient KF who have partial damage, no, not partial, damage to his parietal lobe due to a motorbike accident. So, these situations or their particular conditions have given us some evidence that the STM and the LTM are separated in the brain. Aside from that, it also gave us evidence that there is an overlap between the two. Diba? So, may distinction sila in function, pero may function sila na nag-interact silang dalawa. So, yun yung nakita natin sa cases na tong tatlong to. So, like for example, with patient HM, ang nangyari sa kanya, yung STM niya intact, but he is unable to transfer it to his LTM. So, kumbaga, nag-function si STM niya, pero hindi niya, kahit mag-rehearse siya, hindi siya napupunta doon sa LTM niya. So, paano nasabi yon? Kasi meron siyang isang tester, si Brenda Milner, na ilang beses niya natin si HM, pero hindi pa rin siya kilala ni HM. So, yun yung nangyari. So, dun nila nakita na, may something sa nito. So, long-term memory. Kasi, laging si Brenda ang nagtitest sa kanya, pero hindi niya pa rin kilala si Brenda, diba? So, what's happening? And then, on the case of Clive Waring, ang nakita naman dito is, may problema sa ang nakita sa case niya is may distinct separation yung STM and LTM niya. Kasi ang nangyari sa kanya is nare-remember niya yung recent 1 minute or 2 minutes of his life, but then he forgets the rest. So, kunwari, pumasok. Kasi katulad dun sa crash course psychology, pumasok sa kwarto yung asawa niya, yayakapin niya yung asawa niya, tonto siya, yayakapin niya yung asawa niya. Tapos, after that, he would resume back to playing the piano or whatnot. And then, mamaya papasok ulit sa kwarto yung asawa niya, yayakapin niya ulit yung asawa niya. Kasi nga, hindi niya naalala na ginawa niya na pala yun earlier, few minutes ago. So, from his case, they were able to see that there is a distinct separation between the short-term and the long-term memory. Kasi nakapag-play pa rin siya ng piano eh. And that part is a procedural memory that is located in the long-term memory, or that is a type of long-term memory. Whereas, yung short-term memory, hindi niya naalala, nakakayakap niya lang sa asawa niya. Diba? Parang minsan, sabihin, nabati na ba kita? Diba, minsan may ganun tayong moments. Diba, kuwari, party, maraming tao, tapos ikot ka ng ikot, tapos may biglang, kakilala mo naman, pero bigla kang kinausap na lang na, yung parang, walang preliminaries. Kasi minsan, ganun tayo, lalo na pag di natin masyadong ka-close. So, may preliminaries muna. Tapos ang tatanong mo, nabati na ba kita kanina? Parang di pa, di ba? Parang ganon. So, yung sa kanya, kay Clive Waring, laging nangyayari yun sa kanya. Kasi nga, hindi niya maalala the recent 1 to 2 minutes of his life. And then with patient KF, ang nangyari naman is um, he had STM reduced digit span. So, hindi niya masyado maalala yung sa ano, yung binibigay sa kanyang data. So, bumababa yung performance niya for a task that is only or that's mainly involving the okay, sorry for that one. That's only involving the STM. Okay. Pero yung in terms of his long-term memory, he was seen to be he was seen to have a functioning long-term memory and can uh, form new memories and of the events of his life. So the cases of these three had established a double dissociation between the STM and the LTM. So, maganda yung mga cases nila kasi nga nakatulong sila sa atin para mas maintindihan ano bang nangyayari sa kanilang long-term and short-term memory, particularly involving the said brain parts. Okay. Now, aside from that, the technology, particularly the brain imaging technology that we have, also helped us to locate where memory is in the brain. So, in a study done by Rangat and De Esposito, okay, sorry for that one. Okay, so they did a study to understand whether the hippocampus, um, which we have seen is used for storing long-term memory, also helps store short-term memory. um, so from their study, they found out that the hippocampus and other medial temporal lobe structures are more involved in the long-term memory, but it also plays some role in the short-term memory. So, titingnan natin yan dito sa ating study or sa graph ng study nila. So, in their study, ang ginawa nila is they have shown the participants a sample phase and a test phase. So, ang nakita nila doon is pag novel phase yung pinapakita, there is some sort of delay or in between delay, di ba? Pero, mas tumataas yung signal change doon sa bagong muka na nakikita nila kesa doon sa familiar face. Which is again very true. Kasi if you would recall instances na, ayun, nasa class ka, siguro first day ng class, kilala mo na lahat ng mga kaklase mo, pero may isa kang familiar na muka, unfamiliar na muka na ngayon pa lang nakita. So, tataas talaga yung signal change dan kung na-MRI natin yung utak mo during that moment, no? Yung mas magandang makita yon. Kasi nga, pinaprocess yon ng ating brain. Una-una, neural firing, di ba? Visual code. Isipin mo, kilala ko ba ito? Parang hindi ito familiar. So, tataas talaga yung percent ng signal change dito. And, whereas, if you're looking at the faces of your classmate, whom you know na gano'n talaga itsura nila, wala siya masyadong, or tumaas man yung percent ng signal change, it's only minimal as compared doon sa mga bagong mukha na nakikita natin. Okay. Pero may change pa rin. Okay. So, what do you think it means for us? So, let's talk about it further in our synchronous class during clarificatory discussion or class discussion, no? Okay, next. Okay, so moving on to the different types of long-term memory. So we have the episodic and the semantic memory. Now, we have of course a distinction between the two because um, we have to differentiate them dahil nga magkaiba sila ng information na hinahandle and the types of experience associated as well. So, So according to Tolving, the property of episodic memory involves mental time travel. So anong ibig sabihin nun mo? Bakit parang i-define lang medyo ang dami-dami pang words na ginamit? Kasi nga, dahil episodic memory siya, di ba? Katulad nung una kong tinanong sa inyo, recall the time or tell me when was the or what birthday celebration was memorable for you. So that is episodic memory. And you're doing a mental time travel, di ba? Kasi, like for example, yung sinabi ko nga sa inyo, um, I went as far as, as my seventh birthday. Seventh birthday, I was 7 then, and of course, my sister was, 4 years old. So, it was a mental time travel kasi nga, I went back to that particular birthday celebration in order to recall what happened during that particular birthday celebration. So I experienced traveling back in time to reconnect with the events and what happened in that particular past. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. My cat is fighting with some other cat. Medyo tinotopak din siya today. Okay. Okay. While episodic memory is an experience of mental time travel or more on remembering personal things or personal memory. Semantic memory naman, it is accessing knowledge that doesn't really have anything to do with your personal experience. So it's more like pag tinanong kita, sino ang pambansang bayani? So that's semantic memory. So, of course, sasabihin mo sa akin, si Rizal. Tas, kuwari, sinamahan ko pa yan ng ng tanong na, um, ano yung famous landmark ni Rizal dito sa Pilipinas? Or nasaan yung famous landmark ni Rizal dito sa Pilipinas? So, sasabihin mo, Luneta. So, those are all semantic memory. And, if you would see how it's answered, you know that it doesn't have a personal ties with you. You just answered it in a matter of fact manner. Unless na tinanong kita, do you have any personal experience or memorable experience in Luneta? Diba? So, ang i-access mo na nun is the episodic memory. Okay? So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so looking at the difference between the episodic and semantic memory, natulungan na naman tayo ng field ng neuropsychology in understanding it further. So the case of Casey, meron naman siyang damaged hippocampus and surrounding structures. So likely in that temporal lobe where the hippocampus is. Ang nangyari naman sa kanya is there is um, loss of episodic memory. So, no longer remembering past events. So, ito yung usual amnesia na nakikita natin sa mga movies. Whereas, his semantic memory remains intact. So, pag tinanong mo siya, saan ka pinanganak? Hindi niya alam. Pero pag tinanong mo siya, anong capital ng Manila? Ng Philippines, alam niyang Manila yung capital nun. Or pag tinanong siya, let's say for example, he lost his memory recently lang, itong kakataas lang ng pamasahe. Pag tinanong siya, uh, ano yung huling pamasahe or magkano yung huling pamasahe na alam mo, sabihin niya, um, 9 pesos, naging 10 pesos siya, and 11 pesos, 12 na ba ngayon? Diba? May mga ganun. So, kasi nga, semantic memory yun. Although his semantic memory is the only one intact, we also see in his case that he knows certain thing happened na pwede mong masabi na episodic memory siya. But at the same time, it's also semantic memory. Kasi he knows that his brother died 2 years ago. So that's factual na namatay na yung kapatid niya. Pero personal level siya. Kasi syempre, um, the rest of the world the death for the rest of the world, the death of his brother doesn't really mean anything for them. And then he also knew where the eating utensils are located in the kitchen. So again, it's personal or it's episodic in the sense that it's his own kitchen. So knowing where things are personal for him, but it's also factual in the sense na eto kasi yung lagayan ng mga gamit nila or yeah, this is how things are arranged in his home. Okay, so hopefully you get the gist, you get the idea. Okay, furthermore, with the brain imaging, we also understand how the episodic memory and the semantic memory differ in the different areas of the brain and how they overlap as well. So, in a study by Brian Levin, he had subjects keep diaries on the audio tape describing everyday personal events and facts from semantic knowledge. So, anong nangyari dito? Ang nangyari doon is from their study, they have seen the yellow areas. Yun yung brain regions or brain parts na associated sa ating episodic memory. Yung blue areas naman na nag-light up dun sa brain, ayun naman yung areas na associated with semantic and factual knowledge. So, furthermore, they have seen that, yun nga yung sinabi ko, na pwedeng may overlap between the activation of the episodic and semantic memories, and there is also a distinct difference between the two. So, yung ilaw na nakita nila, they saw some areas na nag-overlap yung dalawang color or yung dalawang areas kasi na-trigger nga yung dalawang type ng memory na yun. And then, at the same time, may areas din na parang distinct yung division nila. Okay. Now, how does the episodic and semantic memory interact? There is an interaction between the two to a certain extent, diba? Um, And this is because our knowledge coming from the semantic memory guides our experience, and this influences the episodic memories that follow that experience. So, like for example, 'di ba, pag pupunta tayo sa isang lugar, we try to know how to get there, and knowing this, the directions to get to that certain place involves the semantic memory, the activation of semantic memory. Kasi nga, like, for example, um, pag pupunta ka ng UMAC, di ba, since you have been in the online class setup for the past 2 years, so yung iba sa inyo parang hindi pa kabisado paano pumunta ng UMAC, especially those who are living outside of Makati. Kasi nga, hindi naman kabisado ang Makati. So, knowing the directions how to get to the university will be part of your semantic memory. On the other hand, the experience of how you get to um, the the university will be part of your episodic memory. So like for example, sasabihin sa'yo, sumakay ka muna sa ganito or yung mga experience na naligaw ka and then sa pagkakaligaw mo na yun, nakadiscover ka ng shortcut papuntang Yumak. So that is part of your episodic memory and the knowledge of the shortcut existing could be part of your semantic memory. So this is how the two interact. Okay, another good example would be, of course, when we watch a baseball game or when we watch certain games, kasi di naman masyado uso dito ang baseball, no? So, in terms of relating to this, hindi tayo masyado makaka-relate. So, let's say, for example, basketball game. Ayan, mas relatable, basketball game. So, di ba pag nagwa-watch tayo ng basketball game, alam natin kung anong gagawin, saan tayo titingin, di ba? So, like for example, yung bigla silang nagkumpulan doon sa half court, alam natin na may free throw. So, that's how it's usually done. May semantic memory involved, may episodic memory involved because you have a personal experience watching a basketball game and you know the rudiments or uh, basic gameplay of a basketball game. Okay. So to further explain this pa, we have what we call the autobiographical memory. And this type of memory is still under both the episodic and semantic memory. Ayan, yan yung overlap nila. Because this is a memory for specific experiences from our life, which can include both the episodic and semantic memory. So, like for example, yan, etong nasa libro, meeting Jill and Mary at Leva's coffee shop, which is a hard coffee shop that is hard to get in the morning. Or, let's say for example, what would be a good example? Yeah, going to a concert of your favorite artist in SM MOA and meeting other fans there in SM MOA. Na ang haba-haba ng pila kasi nga it's a concert. So um that is an autobiographical memory. So asan doon ang episodic component? Episodic component doon yung na-meet mo yung ibang fans, may nakilala kang ibang fans. Semantic component tuloy is the MOA, SM MOA arena, wherein most of the concerts or big concerts are often held. Diba? So, dun madalas nagko-concert. So, that is a semantic component of that particular autobiographical memory. So, just like when when I opened my Facebook memory, nakita ko doon yung concert ng Big Bang when they first held their concert here in Manila, in the Philippines. So yun, episodic component nun is I met two fans from Saint Scholastica. And the semantic component is knowing that they are from Saint Scott, which is a private school, and SMOA Arena is also a semantic component. Okay, so we also have what we call the personal semantic memories, which are facts associated with personal experiences. So, katulad nung sinabi ko kanina. Okay, so let's try to see the differences and further examples of the types of long-term memory. So we have the episodic which is memory for specific personal experience that involves mental time travel back to the time to achieve feeling of reliving the experience. So, katulad nung memorable birthday celebration nyo. Okay, semantic memory, these are the memory that we have for facts or factual knowledge. So, there is a Starbucks down the road from Levas, or there is um there is a Starbucks uh, sa Uptown, dalawang Starbucks, isa sa Uptown Parade and isa sa Uptown Mall mismo. So, that is facts. Autobiographical. So, autobiographical, ito naman, people's memories for experiences from their own lives. These memories have both components of episodic memory and semantic uh, memory. So, these semantic components of autobiographical memory are personal semantic memory. So, like in my case, yung sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, I met two uh, I forgot their name, but I met two fans in the Big Bang concert last, I think, 2016. So, nalaman ko para silang taga Saints ko, and the concert was held in SM MOA Arena. Um, and then after that, we went to the coffee shop na malapit, yung pinakamalapit na coffee shop sa SM MOA Arena, and that time it was also Starbucks after the concert. So that is autobiographical. So it's the combination of an episodic and semantic memory. I'm not sure if the Starbucks is still there. It has been so long since I went to SM MOA Arena for a concert. Parang pupunta na lang ako SM MOA whenever there is a quiz bee competition by Papja. Parang last na lang punta kasi ako doon, 2019, for the quiz bee. Okay. I don't know, 2020, before mag-lockdown. Okay, so, in a study by Wes Makot and Moscovich, ang hirap naman i-pronounce ng mga surname nila, they have tested people's knowledge about public figures, both semantic and episodic components. So, ang nakita nila is that when they have or when they presented certain public figures, like for example, Oprah Winfrey had a TV program, so it's purely semantic. However, when there are some who remember watching Oprah Winfrey's TV show, and this would include their episodic components. Like for example, um, sabihin niya, nung may tumawag nga noon sa akin na hospital daw si ganito, or nanalo daw ako sa ganito. Nung time na yun, nanonood ako nung TV show ni Oprah Winfrey. So, parang katulad din yun ng mga pag naalala natin, yung mga bagyo, yung mga matitinding bagyo sa atin dito sa Pilipinas. So like for example, yung bagyong Ondoy. Where was I during the bagyong Ondoy? Yung, alam ko na yun yung bagyo na steady rain, as in maghapon siya. That's purely semantic. Kasi it's a factual knowledge na malakas talaga yung bagyo ng time na yun. Whereas with the episodic, I remember staying at home and I was waiting for dismissal of class suspension. I was in grad school nung time na yon, nung nagkaroon ng bagyong Ondoy. Ondoy ba, Yolanda? Kaya marami kasing bagyong memorable sa akin. Sorry. Yolanda is sa diba, sa Visayan region. So, yeah, na-remember ko lang with Yolanda, wala akong masyadong episodic memory doon. Pero na-remember ko yung Yolanda. as I was, yes, puro semantic lang ako doon. Walang interaction ng semantic and episodic memory. Okay, so what happens to episodic and semantic memory as it passes? So, nakikita nila is that after time passes, um, when they ask the subject uh, to real stimuli, ang nangyayari doon is parang nagkakaroon ng forgetting but not all or nothing process. So, like for example, yung familiarity, like katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, di ba? I can remember specific details or specific experiences involved with the semantic memory. Like for example, yung kanina sinabi ko, yung Yolanda. I cannot recall anong ginagawa ko nung Yolanda, but I'm familiar with the Typhoon Yolanda. And I'm also confident na after wreaking havoc here, parang iba naman yung sinalanta niyang bagyo. Parang US naman yata after here, if I'm not mistaken. So that's familiarity. Whereas with recollection, remember specific experiences related to that episodic memory. Related to that episodic memory. So, I remember one typhoon, I forgot the name, I'm not sure kung anong pangalan ng typhoon na yun. Pero I was in college, I was not, it was very difficult to get home kasi parang kakatapos pa lang namin or parang nag-overtime kami, nasuspend yung class namin noon, pumunta kami sa bahay ng kaklase ko para ayusin yung thesis namin. We were there up until night. Kasi nga, parang inano namin we took advantage of the class suspension para ayusin yung thesis. However, nagkaroon ng brownout, so we were not able to type our data. So, kaya nag-decide kami umuwi na lang. We did, however, organize our data. So, nag-organize kami ng data ng nakakandila lang. So, that's recollection. Kasi, these are specific, very specific experiences related to an episodic memory. However, with regards to the semantic memory, anong nangyari or anong bagyo yun, I cannot, for the love of God, I cannot remember anong bagyo siya. Okay, so in a study done, wherein they used the remember no procedure, nakita din nila dito kung anong nangyayari between the episodic and semantic memory as time passes. Kasi nga, remember, malaki ang contribution ni time sa pag uh, yung extinction ng isang data or doon sa capability natin to remember certain things. Okay, so ang ginawa nila dito sa study nito is they ask the person if they remember the stimulus is familiar and also remember circumstances in which the stimulus was encountered. So, and also know if the stimulus seems familiar but they don't remember experiencing it per se. And then the other one, what they saw is that they don't know if they don't remember the stimulus at all. So, may gantong instances din tayo, di ba? Minsan sasabihin sa atin na, di ba si ganto, nakilala mo na siya nung ganto, 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 ganto. Ikaw na parang, kailan? Parang hindi naman, parang wala akong maisip na pinakilala siya sa akin or nakita na kami or nagkausap na kami. So, may mga ganun tayong instances. So, yun yung pwedeng mangyari kasi sa atin when we try to remember things and when we try to know things. Pag sa semantic, di ba, yung sasabihin sa'yo, alam mo to, sasabihin mo, parang, pero maalala. So that's still part of our semantic memory. Pero nga dahil may factor ng time, so likely na forget na natin siya, yung experience na yon. Kaya there is the sense of familiarity, pero hindi mo na maalala na na-experience mo yung stimulus. Okay. So another study had been done, and in this study, tinignan ni uh, Petrican, Petrican if people's memory for public events have changed over time. So, ayan, mas pinakita niya dito sa study na to how much uh, how much does the time influence um, our episodic and semantic memory. So, from the results of the study, ang nakita niya dito is that uh, mas madami yung mga taong nakakaalala nung semantic memory, pertaining to the semantic memory, uh, as compared doon sa taong nakaka-remember ng episodic memory nila. And then, pero mas mataas pa rin si nakaka-remember kesa doon sa mga taong wala talagang alam or wala talagang naaalala with both the semantic and episodic memory. For the most recent, ano yan ha, 10 years na events. Whereas, nung tinignan nila doon sa 40 to 50 years ago na events, ang nakita nila is that mataas yung mga taong mas nakakaalala ng event. So, pertaining to the semantic memory. Um, and then, pero mas mataas naman ang taong wala talaga naaalala with both semantic and episodic memory kesa doon sa taong naaalala yung episodic memory nila. So, what they have concluded is that memories for 40 to 50 years event have lost a lot of their episodic character or the episodic data. So, ito yung nakita niya. So, the green one is remember, the blue one is no for the semantic, and the red one is don't know. So, kung makikita nga natin dito, ito yung results na nabanggit ko earlier, 10 years ago or less, mas mataas yung capacity ng mga tao na ma-remember yung episodic memories nila or ma-recall yung episodic memories nila. Whereas with the semantic memory, it's both sustained, yung factual knowledge, mas mataas, even though it's 40 to 50 years ago. Pero, for the semantic, episodic memory, if it's 40, 50 years ago, mas mababa siya kesa doon sa talagang walang naalala doon sa event na yun. So, remember the participants for this particular study are 50 years to adult. Ah, 50 years. 50 years yung events. Tapos adults yung lahat ng participants nila. Okay. Now, going to this one, ito na. Paano naman tayo nagpo-form ng procedural memory? So, remember that procedural memory is another type of long-term memory. Pero, it's more focused on the process. So, hindi siya masyadong related, or in a way we can relate it to our both of our episodic and semantic memory, but it's a different kettle of fish in terms of what does it do or how does procedural memory functions for us. So procedural memory, we have under it explicit memories, memories we are aware of, and implicit memories, memories we aren't aware of. So in a procedural memory, we have priming and conditioning. So tingnan natin siya further here. So yan. So in long-term memory, so we have explicit memory which we are conscious about. So nandito si episodic events and factual or semantic memory. For the not conscious, we have the implicit memory which is under that the procedural memory, the priming and conditioning. So with the procedural memory, this is, in other terms, a skill memory. So this is the memory that we have for doing things that are usually involves learned skills. Like for example, riding a bike, magsaing, magluto ng adobo, magluto ng kung ano man. So this all has something to do with certain processes or procedures. This is also how we learn to do tasks or things, diba? Like for example, ano ba to? Paano maghugas ng plato, paano maglaba. So, like in the case of Clive Wearing na mention ko kanina na hindi siya nakaka-form ng LTM, ng long-term memory, kaya nga nalilimutan niya na niyakap niya na pala yung asawa niya about 1 or 2 minutes ago. But, from my anecdote or do sa binigay ko example sa inyo kanina, he is still able to play piano. So the piano playing is under his procedural memory. His knowledge of playing the piano is under the procedural memory. Okay. And it was also the same for patient HM. Di ba? Nagkaroon nga siya ng amnesia. Hindi niya na maalala yung past events sa buhay niya. However, he was still able to draw pictures. Alam niya kung paano mag-drawing. So, that particular task or skill, hindi niya naman nalimutan yon. Yun lang. Dahil nga, hindi siya makaform ng new memories for things, hindi siya makapag-drawing ng parang kada drawing parang bagong paggagayahan ulit. So medyo mahirap yun sa kanya kasi nga hindi siya maka-form ng new memories. Okay. On the case of patient Casey naman, another case natin, di ba kanina, he can form a new LTM but he can learn new things. So, yan. Ang nagawa niya was that he was able to sort out books and stack books in the library. So, and then in abnormal psychology, actually, ang nakita nila, people who have dissociative amnesia or nagkakaroon ng amnesia, they are able to retain skills from the past and also learn new ones. And also we can see the procedural memory and the capacity of these people na mag-hold ng conversation, and also following the grammar skills during those conversation or dialogue without any problem kahit na may problem sila sa ibang aspects ng kanilang long-term memory. Okay. Now, in priming and conditioning. So, with this one, when we talk about priming, it is presentation of one stimulus or the priming stimulus which changes the way the person responds to another stimulus or a test stimulus. So, and this is how the parang in a way how it affects our procedural memory and long-term memory as well. So like for example, when we see the word bird, we respond more quickly um, than to other words. So Okay, so let's say for example, nakita mo yung word na bird. So, magre-respond ka kagad immediately dahil familiar sa'yo yung word na bird na yon. However, if it's another presentation of the bird, like for example, a specific type of bird, like a specific type ng bird. Kakatu. Kakatu is a specific species of a bird. So, in terms of responding to that, medyo hindi ganun ka-quick yung pag-respond mo. Kasi nga, in terms of familiarity, you're not much familiar to that. But after several rehearsals, ayun, the familiarity will also sink in. So in the implicit memory, we also have the priming effect. Of course, when the subject may not remember original presentation of the priming stimulus. So, we can understand it better by seeing how children learn. Diba? When they learn things, like for example, um, when they learn the alphabet, papakita sa kanila, letter A. So, dahil unang ayaw si letter A, alam kagad nila, pag pinakita si flashcard na A, sagot kagad sila A. Pero pag lumipat ka na A, B, C, or B, C, D, E, tas hindi pa siya napaprime doon, or hindi pa siya na-expose this stimulus na yun, it will take some time for the child to respond to those new stimulus. So, the same when they learn animals, di ba? So, nagkakaroon tayo dito ng priming effect. Okay, so in a particular study done by Peter Graf, okay, wherein he tested priming. Ang nakita niya, repetition priming occur in everyday experience, like for example, advertisements. So this is wherein we have what we call the propaganda effect, wherein subjects are more likely to rate statements they have read or heard before as being true simply because they have been exposed to them before. So, in one of another uh, field of psychology, pinag-aaralan ko itong propaganda effect. And this is also being used a lot by politicians as well. Now, let's focus muna sa consumer side wherein the propaganda effect had been seen or constantly seen. Um, we tend to buy more stuff if we tend to um, expose yung parang napaprime tayo dito almost in everyday situations. Like for example, um, ano ba to? Yung mga advertisements, diba? The tendency why we buy certain brands um, over other brands because of the fact na mas malaki yung kanilang or mas madami silang advertisements other than um, other type of companies or other type of brands. And the same with yung ginagamit ng politician. So, napaprime sila dito. Diba? Kaya nga maraming naniniwala dun sa mga a bit delusional na claims ng ano ba to? Delusional claims ng mga yung bloggers and also the politicians themselves. So, kaya nga diba, we don't like trolls kasi what they are doing is the propaganda effect. So, marami ngayon naniniwala na meron ng gold, na mayaman ang nakaupong presidente ngayon because they are doing this one. Pina-prime sila, repetition of priming, in order for the people who are not really exposed or doesn't really have means to get proper information or more reliable information, they are constantly exposed to these types of um, advertisements or propaganda. So kaya ang nangyayari tuloy na pinapaniwalaan nila na totoo nga yun. Kasi ayun, they are exposed to this priming or these things. So, sad, di ba? Pero um, this is why uh, for us in the psychology field, we have to combat that because um, it's not good uh, to believe something just because we have been constantly exposed to it over and over and over again. Okay, so this is what happened in the study. Nakita doon sa study ni Graf, people with amnesia, this one, A, did poorly on the recall of tests compared to medical inpatients and the alcoholic controls. So this is the medical inpatients, the alcoholic controls, and the people with amnesia. So they did poorly in the recall part, whereas yung inpatients walang problema, and the alcoholic wala rin problema, halos magkatulad sila ng levels ng performance, no? Whereas with the people with amnesia or amnesia patients, um, very low yung kanilang performance as compared with these other two groups. On the other hand, yung B trial, ang nakita nila is in the implicit memory tests wherein they are asked to complete three-letter word stems. So this is part of the implicit memory. They did almost the same or even better as compared with the inpatients and the alcoholics. So, the gray areas on the bar, indicate performance on words that the participants hadn't seen earlier. So, ang makikita natin dito sa study na yon is that um, they are able to do just as well as other people when it comes to implicit memory tests. Kasi there's nothing that they have to recall, but rather it's more on how they were primed in this particular area. May priming na nangyari dito. And since may priming effect, they did well as uh, they did as well as the other two groups. Okay, so last slide. Okay, now in the last slide, we have to also, or we can also understand classical conditioning better in terms of long-term memory. So, remember with classical conditioning, we pair two stimuli and the one being the neutral stimulus and the other being the conditioned stimulus. And then when they are paired, nagkakaroon na tayo dito ng response later on, yung conditioned response. Diba? Neutral stimulus, conditioning stimulus equals to conditioned response. So like for example, here in the Philippines, dahil nga we are conditioned to do that sa jeep, diba? Pag may nag-abot ng or may nag-extend ng kanyang kamay na may hawak na barya or pera, that is a neutral stimulus. And then, usually, kinokondisyon tayo na abutin din siya or may sasabihin siya na bayad po, pakiabot. So, that's a conditioning stimulus, right? And then, we would hold out our hand as a conditioned response para abutin yung pera niya at ibigay doon sa makaabot doon sa jeepney driver, 'di ba? Or sa conductor. So, hanggang sa yung neutral stimulus na yung pag-extend nung pasahero ng kamay na may hawak na pera would be a conditioned stimulus na din. Na kahit hindi niya sabihin sa atin na paabot po, bayad po, we know what to do. Kasi nga, naging conditioned stimulus na siya, and which prompts our conditioned response. Okay? Sometimes we see that parang nag-autopilot tayo din at times, di ba? Even when we're studying, where may mga nag-study, ako personally when I was in college or when I was studying, I would read my notes on, yeah, in the jeepney. And then pag may nag-abot, parang pag nahagip ng mata ko na may nag-aabot, tapos hindi nagsasalita, automatic nag-extend na rin yung kamay ko. So, that is how it's usually done or how we are conditioned. Um, it has something to do with procedural memory as well. Na parang we know what to do even though we are not told what to do. Okay, so that's it for the discussion. Hopefully you have read or finished reading the chapter 6, and we'll be moving to the next chapter. Please read it as well. So please prepare your clarificatory questions and the synchronous discussion, and of course prepare for the chapter test after. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day.